The checkpoint. New Year's Eve brought a crisp, cloudless sky, yet the weak winter sun failed to warm the biting chill. The Whitehead building, constructed from sheet metal with foam insulation against the corrugated sides, failed to keep the cold at bay, which crept in through the stark concrete floor. Anthony, the coup, wrapped his coat tighter as he navigated the noisy factory floor, the din of machinery drowning out his thoughts. His gaze met with Brent Collier, the floor supervisor. Tall with light blonde hair, Anthony had a robust build, testament to his years as a hardworking oil rig worker. Despite his family's wealth, he chose to earn his own way, distancing himself from his father's fortune. Maintaining his physical condition, Anthony frequented Arthur Porter's gym, where the famed trainer prepared fighters for greatness, including the once celebrated Garland Louviere. Despite Garland's tragic end in the ring, Arthur continued to train each client with potential greatness in mind. Brent acknowledged him, his tone always carrying a hint of insolence. Anthony sensed Brent's duplicity, the kind to feign friendliness only to cause mischief unseen. Let's end early today. Tell everyone to head home, wish them a happy new year. We'll reconvene on the 2nd, Anthony instructed. Understood, Brent replied, his peculiar tone lingering. They'll be compensated for the full day, Anthony added, ensuring no misunderstandings. Once everyone's clocked out, place the time cards in my office. Thank you. Brent responded with the same unusual inflection, causing Anthony to mutter under his breath as he walked away. His personal turmoil had begun with the stark news of his father's passing, delivered early one morning, disrupting his troubled sleep amid the remnants of last night's solitary revelry. Cheyenne, his wife, exclaimed loudly and turned away. Anthony also expressed frustration upon noticing the wine leaking from the container, staining the carpet. Anthony, your father has passed away, Susan Whitehead, his mother, informed him. Finally, was Anthony's silent reaction. Marcus had suddenly and decisively ended his marriage with Susan to wed a young woman named Natasha Eichenbach. Not long after marrying Natasha, Marcus experienced a severe health crisis. He struggled on for another 3 years before passing. Finally, Anthony thought again. Well, I mean, mother, it's hardly unexpected, right? Anthony voiced aloud. Ugh, what time is it? Ask them to call later, Cheyenne grumbled loudly. Anthony responded with a sharp pat on Cheyenne's backside. When she turned to confront him, Anthony firmly held her face, her blue eyes flashing with anger, yet she held back her words. Susan proceeded to inform Anthony about the arrangements, including visitation and the funeral. Anthony inquired if she had informed the rest of the family. Susan confirmed she hadn't. He was the first she contacted. After the conversation, Anthony hung up. My father's gone, understand? He's gone, and you're here causing a scene, Anthony yelled at his agitated wife. Well, excuse me, how was I supposed to know? Cheyenne retorted sharply. Anthony left the bedroom and descended the stairs. Turning on the kitchen light, he saw numerous cockroaches scattering. A foul odor lingered that he couldn't place. Unbelievable, Anthony muttered, starting to clean the kitchen determinedly. What are you doing? Cheyenne inquired, absent-mindedly touching her chest. Can't you tell, Cheyenne? I'm cleaning up. Surprising, I know, but that's what it is, Anthony retorted. Seriously, Anthony? Cheyenne snapped, pouring herself a glass of wine. Wine? Now, Cheyenne, it's barely morning, Anthony remarked. Bite the bullet, Cheyenne retorted sharply. Anthony noticed the kitchen trash overflowing and headed to the garage to grab a large yard waste bag. As he was hauling the bag out the front door, Cheyenne seemed to yearn for another round of morning tonic. When Anthony came back from disposing of the trash, he set about making coffee. A look inside the fridge revealed a collection of takeout containers, but nothing suitable for breakfast. He filled another yard waste bag with the contents of the fridge and freezer. A rolled-up advertisement flyer became an impromptu weapon against insects. Sipping on the strong, overcooked coffee, Anthony walked into their living room. It was a mess. The expensive couch had burn marks from scattered embers. The carpet was marred with irreversible spills and stains, and the mahogany furniture sported ring marks from beer cans left without coasters, along with some mysterious scratches. Throughout his cleaning ordeal, a relentless headache plagued him. He craved a drink, perhaps several beers, or to open the bottle of gin sitting on the bookshelf. What's for lunch? Cheyenne inquired, entering the room with a glass of wine. Are you cooking? Anthony responded. You must be joking, Cheyenne laughed. I was going to order from Hop Kim's. That sounds good. Maybe some hot and sour soup and twice-cooked pork, Anthony said, his gaze sweeping over the disordered living room. It'll be ready in 20 minutes, Cheyenne informed him. Are we taking your car? Anthony asked, trying to clean the coffee table with some polish and paper towels. What? Cheyenne looked puzzled, wine glass in hand. Forget it, Cheyenne, I'm swamped here. Just forget it, Anthony replied, frustrated by the ineffectiveness of the furniture polish on the table's surface. After lunch, Cheyenne transferred most of her meal into the almost bare refrigerator. Anthony moved the vacuum cleaner across the carpet in their living room. Cheyenne, having switched from wine to vodka, watched him with a playful expression. Enough, Anthony exclaimed, abandoning his effort. He decided to freshen up and made his way upstairs, noticing the neglected state of the steps, which clearly hadn't been cleaned for some time. The bathroom light flickered before casting a stark glow. The lighting fixture, once holding 3 frosted globes, now had just one, providing a softened light, while the others shone brightly and unfiltered, straining his weary eyes. His reflection showed a puffy face with dark circles under his brown eyes, and his light brown facial hair had grown thick. His blonde hair was disheveled. "What are you doing, admiring yourself?" Cheyenne teased, finding amusement in his actions. Anthony saw his wife's image in the mirror, recalling the initial allure of the bold, loud 19-year-old. Her striking appearance had been a gift from her Uncle Danny, her mother's partner. Her blonde hair was artificially colored, which Anthony found somewhat appealing. Moreover, Cheyenne had upset Marcus Whitehead. She had also managed to vex Susan, who had attempted to mediate with gentle persuasion, leading to Anthony's agreement to a prenuptial contract. Cheyenne was reluctant to sign the agreement. However, Anthony, soon to earn his master's in engineering and expecting a substantial salary from the parish government, insisted. "Sign here, Miss Frick, or consider the engagement ring a farewell gift," Anthony had stated firmly. Cheyenne, with a burst of expletives, reluctantly signed the document. With a glare at Anthony's lawyer, she initialed each page and signed the final one. "What about her belongings?" inquired Uncle Tommy. "All right, I'll humor you," Anthony remarked, eyeing the man who had let himself go. "What's she actually contributing to this marriage? If it ends, for whatever reason, she can take her assets and her personal expressions with her. What's left?" 14 years post-nuptials, Anthony was perplexed about what drove him to wed Cheyenne Allison Frick. Staring at the grubby mirror under the stark bathroom light, he pondered why he had been convinced to buy this oversized house and how he had turned into the disheveled figure reflecting back at him. Fortunately, there was still hot water. Anthony moistened a washcloth to ease the shaving of his neglected beard, while Cheyenne, uninterested, went to find more liquor. The whole time he shaved, his head throbbed relentlessly. How do blind folks manage this? Anthony mused aloud, squinting against the bright light. Post-shower, he found a dress shirt that, to his dismay, didn't fit his changed physique, struggling to button it over his stomach. His best suit was similarly unforgiving. Cheyenne mentioned they were running low on marijuana as he made his way downstairs. "Also, my mom said she's sorry to hear about your dad." "Tell her thanks," Anthony replied dryly. "Cheyenne, it's nearly 4. When do you usually shower?" "Whenever," she replied nonchalantly, offering him the bong. "I don't want any," Anthony declined. "You've had some already. How much is left?" she pressed. "No, Cheyenne. I don't want any more. Not this. Look at this place. It was worth $200,000 once. Now we'd be lucky to get half that. And look at me. I was 170 when we got married. Now, I'm scared to even weigh myself," Anthony vented. "I'm still 124, Cheyenne boasted, gesturing to herself. "That's doubtful," Anthony retorted, surveying the living room. "I am," Cheyenne insisted. "No more. No more smoking, no more drinking," Anthony firmly decided. "Hope you don't expect me to follow suit," Cheyenne remarked, with a look of disbelief. "Absolutely not," Anthony replied, heading towards the garage. "I imagine you'll just do what you feel like, whenever you want to." Anthony then drove to his mother's place. His siblings, Jimmy and Lisa Whitehead, were already there at Susan's house. After knocking once, Anthony walked in and saw Susan, Lisa, and Jimmy at the kitchen counter, enjoying some coffee. Susan was seated between Jimmy and Lisa, as was often the case. "Is there any coffee left for me?" Anthony inquired, embracing his sister and then his mother. "Sure," Susan responded. "Call your sisters," insisted Lisa. "They haven't shown up." "Really? Oh, well, this was a last-minute decision for me," Anthony replied. "No, they've decided not to attend the funeral," Jimmy clarified. "I'll speak to them," Anthony assured. "We need you to give the eulogy," Susan mentioned softly. "Me?" Anthony responded with a cynical chuckle. "What am I supposed to say? That he was stubborn and self-centered. Always had to have his way. He only acted when it benefited him. He was a decent father," Susan countered, defending her ex-husband. "Right, with one son battling severe addiction, nearly losing his life over it. 2 daughters who faced challenges early on. One of them didn't even finish high school until after I had left. And then, there's me, leaving home and marrying someone just to prove a point. Thankfully, we didn't have kids." "Yes, Mother, he was quite the father," Anthony reflected internally. "Mom, honestly, I don't think I can do it justice," Anthony finally said. "But it's a relief we're talking about it." "Got a headache?" Jimmy asked as Anthony took some aspirin with his coffee. "No, Jimmy, just dealing with annoyances," Anthony replied with a hint of irony. "So, try not to add to them." "Anthony," Susan scolded gently. Before leaving his mother's home, Anthony committed to persuading Cindy and Barbara to come to the funeral. He also agreed to deliver the eulogy. He congratulated Jimmy on achieving a decade of being clean from drugs and inquired about Lisa's daughter, his niece Gracie. "She's excelling academically this semester," Lisa beamed. Upon Anthony's return, Cheyenne immediately asked, "Got any cash?" "Just a little." "What's up?" Anthony responded, reaching for his wallet. "Lionel's dropping by with some high-grade herbal tea," Cheyenne hinted. "That's an issue, Cheyenne," Anthony retorted. "I've decided no more herbal tea in our home. And since you're the one interested, you'll need to sort out the finances without my help." What? Cheyenne exclaimed, taken aback. To clarify, I don't want that tea here. If it's coming, I'm not contributing financially, Anthony reiterated. Actually, I'm even considering getting rid of all the alcohol. You wouldn't dare, Cheyenne snapped. Nevertheless, Cheyenne managed to scrape together the money before Lionel arrived. Anthony looked on, displeased, as Cheyenne handed over the crumpled notes for the tea. The scent of the herbal tea wafted through the air, testing Anthony's willpower. He nearly succumbed to pouring a drink but resisted. Instead, he focused on drafting his father's eulogy. Later, while Cheyenne was passed out from the night's indulgences, Anthony discreetly took all the bank cards from her purse, doing the same with his wallet, leaving only one card. He secured these, along with important documents, in their home office safe, away from Cheyenne's reach. The next morning, Anthony left for Dusty's country kitchen for breakfast, nursing a severe headache and trembling hands, a reminder from a college psychology class about the symptoms of withdrawal. Cheyenne's frantic voice later pierced the morning calm, demanding over the phone, "Where are my cards?" "What cards, Cheyenne? You don't have any leverage here," Anthony said with apparent calmness. Internally, he was anything but calm, dreading the argument with his wife. "The cards, Anthony. The ones from my wallet," Cheyenne yelled. "Oh, those cards. The ones with my name on them," Anthony inquired. "I have them. You don't need them." "What? You can't do that. They're mine," Cheyenne protested loudly. "Are they?" "Your name wasn't on them," Anthony replied. "Please, lower your voice. I already have a headache." He ended the call just as she began to shout again, not realizing she was speaking to no one. Anthony let her next call go to voicemail. Hearing just the start of her message made Anthony marvel at her capacity to yell. His headache was too severe to respond with anything more than a groan. Since the account was not under Cheyenne Whitehead's name, Mitch Dufour from First Union Bank contacted Anthony Whitehead after Cheyenne tried to get a new debit card. "Mr. Dufour, Cheyenne Whitehead can have a card for any account she currently has with your bank," Anthony stated. "Thank you, Mr. Whitehead," Mitch responded. "Just to clarify, Mr. Dufour," Anthony continued, "any account that is mine should remain inaccessible to her. If Cheyenne Allison Frick Whitehead accesses even a penny of my funds, I will switch banks. Is that clear, Mr. Dufour?" "Absolutely clear, Mr. Whitehead," Mitch confirmed, ending the conversation. Soon after, Anthony ignored another call from his wife, letting it go to voicemail. She left a long, furious message, which he listened to at a lower volume. Driving past Whitehead Generators, the family business, he pulled into the large parking lot and stopped. "I swear, Anthony, you'll regret this. You think you can do this to me? I'll end this marriage, do you hear me?" Cheyenne's voice blared from the voicemail. "Thank goodness," Anthony exclaimed. "Yes, Cheyenne, that's the first sensible thing you've mentioned." Nick Fowler, his lawyer, who had prepared the prenuptial agreement, had passed away. Anthony felt terrible. He couldn't recall when Mr. Fowler had died. He faintly remembered receiving a notification from the offices of Ferguson, Benoit, Fowler, Jones about his documents, yet he couldn't recall the name of the lawyer who took over Nick Fowler's workload. Ferguson, Benoit, Fowler, Jones, if you know your party's extension, please enter it now, followed by the hash key. For our company directory, press 311. For hours and location, press 312. For the general mailbox, press 313. For the operator, press 0, came a friendly male voice. Anthony pressed 311 and listened to the directory. Not recognizing any names, he decided to return home and search for the letter in his office. Going home proved to be a mistake. Cheyenne was in a furious state, joined by her mother and her mother's boyfriend, Uncle Bootsy. For some reason, Uncle Bootsy felt it necessary to lecture Anthony on the financial entitlements Cheyenne had as his spouse. Anthony began recording the dispute on his phone. "Please move aside," Anthony said. "This is my house. I won't tolerate you confronting me here." "Listen here, kid," Uncle Bootsy retorted, pointing a finger at Anthony's chest. "Don't touch me again," Anthony warned. But the old man ignored the warning and poked him again. Anthony responded physically, leading to a scuffle. Uncle Bootsy boasted about his military background, dodging Anthony's blow. "Miss Frick, you and your partner must leave my property now," Anthony demanded, facing the now yelling woman and a quiet Cheyenne. Anthony retreated to his home office to search for the letter from Ferguson, Benoit, Fowler, Jones. He noticed someone had tampered with his desk and glanced at the safe. It had been moved, but without the key, Cheyenne would struggle to open it. "Carter Fullerlove," Anthony noted, spotting the letter. The letter contained Carter's email address, prompting Anthony to turn on his computer. Suddenly, loud knocking echoed on his office door. "The police are here, you idiot," Cheyenne yelled through the door. "They want to talk to you." "Wow, that was fast," Anthony mumbled. "No sirens, though." "Rabbit hit me hard, buddy," Uncle Bootsy mumbled, his face marked with bruises. Shock crossed the old man's face, and he gasped when Anthony struck him in the chest. Uncle Bootsy fell onto the worn carpet with a thud. "Good effort, Cheyenne," Anthony said with a smirk. "But, Miss Frick, you and your friend here need to leave my place." "It's my place too," Cheyenne retorted sharply. "He has a heart condition," Cheyenne's mother shouted, trying to help Uncle Bootsy. then get an ambulance. He won't improve just lying there, Anthony replied coolly, then shut and locked his office door again. When the sound of sirens finally reached him, Anthony unlocked his door. He noticed Cheyenne's panic as she saw 2 police cars accompany the St. Elizabeth Trauma Center's ambulance. Clearly, her call to 911, claiming her husband had assaulted her mother's boyfriend, led the operator to dispatch the police as well. Cheyenne desperately tried to conceal any incriminating items in the living room, darting towards the kitchen. "Right in here," Anthony directed, pointing. "And officer, you might want to check the fridge." "You despicable man," Cheyenne shouted, lunging at Anthony. The police handcuffed Anthony and escorted him to a cruiser, apologizing as they did so. The 911 call had accused Anthony of starting the altercation, so they had to take him in. Cheyenne resisted fiercely. Meanwhile, the ambulance loaded up, and Donna Frick accompanied John Bootsy Bordelin to the hospital. "Here are your keys, sir," said the partner of the officer. "Everything's secured. Press the button on the key fob and you'll hear the alarm confirm with 3 beeps. That means it's activated," Anthony confirmed. "Thanks." "Of course, sir," the officer replied, placing the keys in Anthony's shirt pocket. Anthony surveyed the crowd of neighbors gathered across the street, offering them a polite nod. Living in this house for years with Cheyenne, he realized he didn't recognize any of the onlookers. "Could I ask you something?" Anthony inquired as they observed Cheyenne being escorted to the second police car. "What can I do for you, sir?" responded the officer. "Just try not to put us in the same holding area, okay?" Anthony asked with a half smile. "We'll see what we can do," the officer responded with a grin. "But no guarantees," added the second officer, chuckling. "It's usually the men who cause us trouble, right?" remarked the officer to his colleague as he started the car. "Welcome to our service. If you know the extension number of the person you're trying to reach, please enter it now," announced the automated system cheerfully. Anthony dialed 419 and pressed the hash key. Soon, he was prompted to leave a message for Carter Fullilove. "Sir, your wife is asking who her lawyer is," inquired a female officer. "I'm not sure. I wasn't aware she had one," Anthony replied, maintaining his composure. "You seem to be taking this quite calmly, sir," noted the arresting officer. Carter Fullilove, a distinguished African-American gentleman, listened intently with a neutral expression as Anthony explained the situation, nodding only when Anthony mentioned he would need Carter for his divorce proceedings. "Let's prioritize," Carter finally said. "We'll start with the arraignment, then address everything else in order." "Unbelievable jerk." "Anthony, seriously, stop, don't tell me to shut up." "Anthony, I need a lawyer, now let go of me," Cheyenne yelled at Anthony and at the bailiff as he and Carter walked into the St. Anne Parish courtroom. "Contestant number 2, Carter inquired, showing a playful side that hadn't appeared before. "Right, so, what's her consolation prize?" Anthony joked. "Zelda, inform her of her prize," Carter remarked, gesturing towards a seat. "I'll speak with Hightower, see what's happening." Carter and David Hightower, the assistant district attorney of St. Anne Parish, huddled together, murmuring, then separated. David examined the documents, glanced at Anthony, and gave a nod to the civil engineer. "You didn't mention you're with St. Anne," Carter pointed out as he returned to Anthony. "Oops, thought I did," Anthony responded. "Well, he's aware of your job, so doesn't see you running off," Carter explained. "You can enter your plea, guessing we're aiming for not guilty, then you can leave." "Depends. I'm not even sure of the charges," Anthony confessed. "Domestic violence, assault and battery," Carter disclosed. "Then, not guilty it is," Anthony concurred. "Anthony Marcus Whitehead, you insufferable jerk, get me out of here," Cheyenne shouted as Judge Linda Neuenberg pounded her gavel, freeing Anthony after David Hightower opted not to seek bail. "Just keep yelling. It's getting you so far," Anthony muttered as Judge Neuenberg ordered the bailiff to escort the irate woman out of the courtroom. Anthony returned home, freshened up, and chose some comfortable clothes. He then reached out to Carter's office. "All right, I've been through the arraignment. Let's handle the rest," Anthony stated. "In a hurry, aren't you?" Carter noted. "Lost my father recently, Mr. Fullilove," Anthony mentioned. "I am truly sorry for your loss," Carter remarked, his tone almost believable. "And I have no clue what I'll be getting from the estate," Anthony continued. With my father's sense of humor, it could be a box of old toys and a sarcastic note. Carter inquired. "Our relationship was complicated," Anthony confessed. "But even if it's just a small amount, I need to ensure Cheyenne Allison Frick Whitehead doesn't see a cent of it. If we proceed before the will's disclosure, she won't have a claim." "I've got the prenuptial agreement right here," Carter noted. "And after today's court scene, we know exactly where to find her," Anthony said with a smirk. The memorial service for Marcus Whitehead was a subdued affair. Anthony, struggling to fit into his black suit, ended up buying a new one along with a crisp white shirt from Abdul's. Cindy and Barbara, the Whitehead twins, made a brief appearance at the service, more to satisfy their mother than to mourn their father. In his eulogy, Anthony largely talked about the vast empire his father had built and his limited charitable works. He recounted a memorable moment, saying, "I can't pinpoint which mistake it was, given the many I've made. But after one such mistake, my dad just exhaled and said, 'Loving a good kid is easy. Loving a challenging one requires all the tricks you've got.'" I always wondered who he was referring to. Well, Dad, I guess it's God's turn to use those tricks on you, he finished. Wow, big brother, Lisa whispered, that was quite touching. I almost thought you were sincere. Huh, thanks, Anthony replied, laughing and hugging his sister. Cheyenne somehow turned her jail time at St. Anne lockup into a stint in drug rehab at the DeGard Chemical Dependency Unit in Louisiana. Anthony only knew about this because Cheyenne was covered under his insurance via St. Anne Parish. Carter, looking defeated, explained that he couldn't serve Cheyenne with papers. The rehab center was strict about confidentiality and wouldn't confirm if Cheyenne Allison Frick Whitehead was a patient, even though Anthony knew she was, due to the insurance records. Whether Carter Fullilove was a lawyer or not made no difference to the authorities since the ongoing divorce was a private issue. Carter shrugged again and got in touch with Anthony Whitehead. She's either extremely clever or extraordinarily fortunate, Carter commented gravely to Anthony. Incredibly cunning, unbelievably sly, and entirely self-centered, Anthony remarked wearily. The will reading is set for tomorrow. Well then, the will reading took the Whitehead family by surprise. Despite Marcus's decision to pursue and eventually marry Natasha Eichenbach, who was already separated from Dwight Dowse, without disregarding his ex-wife or his descendants in his will. I propose we have an immediate board meeting, Susan suggested grimly as they gathered in the law office's conference room. Susan easily secured her role as Chief Executive Officer of Whitehead Generators. Anthony's nomination as Chief Operating Officer faced only one dissent, from Anthony himself. Remember, I already have a job. A decent job at St. Anne Parish, Anthony reminded them. Think about it, $42,000 a year, or $500,000 a year. Even with your education from ULD, it's clear, Jimmy pointed out. Anthony, it's not just about my money, but also about protecting Gracie's and your assets, Lisa persuaded. All right, I'll resign on Monday, Anthony conceded reluctantly to everyone. And using Gracie to persuade me, that's low. Anthony then playfully hit his younger brother on the back of the head, causing Lisa to chuckle and Susan to shake her head in disapproval. The University of Louisiana at DeGard is respectable, you know, Anthony retorted. Clearly, they taught you well, Jimmy quipped, nursing the back of his head. On Monday, Anthony was promptly contacted by his insurance company after he left his supervisor's office. Shaking his head, Anthony reached out to Carter. Anthony let the gentleman know Cheyenne has just left to handle some personal business. In response, Carter reached out to Cass Jackson, providing him with the locations of Ms. Donna Frick and Anthony and Cheyenne Whitehead. The man assured Carter with a smile that he would take care of it. Upon arrival at Donna's residence, Cass greeted cheerfully, "Good day. Cass Jackson here, at your service. Oh, and Lionel mentioned I should check in with Cheyenne, am I right? Did Lionel send you?" Cheyenne inquired, emerging behind Donna. "Wow, that was fast. I only called him a moment ago, right?" Cass, grinning, replied, "Yeah, I was nearby when your friend called me." "Here, I have the payment for you," Cheyenne said, offering $200 bills. "No need for that now, you might need it later," Cass responded, his demeanor changing as he handed her a manila envelope. "Mrs. Whitehead, you've been served." "What?" Cheyenne gasped, taking the envelope. Cheyenne was furious, exclaiming loudly as Cass snapped a quick photo of her with the envelope. "Take care now," Cass said with a smirk, leaving with a casual farewell. Anthony was fully aware that Cheyenne had received the documents. She bombarded his phone with angry messages and yelled at him when he answered his office phone. "I'm at work, Cheyenne," Anthony responded, trying to remain calm. Despite his outward calm, Anthony disliked confrontation, a trait rooted in his uneasy childhood relationship with his father, Marcus, who was always simmering with anger. "Maybe you should spend some time going through the documents instead of lounging around," Anthony suggested. "I've been more than fair with you," Cheyenne retorted loudly, threatening to take everything from him. "We're in a no-fault state, Cheyenne," Anthony reminded her. "No matter the situation, the most you can claim is half. Plus, don't forget our prenup, okay?" "That agreement means nothing to me," Cheyenne spat back. Anthony didn't expect any aggressive confrontation from Cheyenne, however. When Carter Fullilove informed David Hightower that Cheyenne Whitehead had exited the DeGard CDU without completing the full 28-day program, David had St. Anne Parish deputies retrieve her from her mother's trailer. Coming home from work, Anthony stepped into his house and immediately felt overwhelmed by exhaustion. Surveying the mess, his despair deepened, almost crushing him. "I can't stay here," he muttered to himself, resolving to leave. He mentally inventoried his belongings, calculating how many boxes he would need to pack his essentials. The Pin-Oak Motel offered a stark contrast with its tidy room, free from the odors of spilled beverages and smoke. The linens were intact and clean, the air fresh and unpolluted. "It's my own doing," Anthony reflected grimly, pondering the chaotic state of his home and his life. At the motel, the clerk, a young woman with a plain appearance, mentioned the range of movies available in the rooms. Anthony, trying to lighten the mood, joked about the movie selection as he turned on the TV and browsed through the channels. He sat there, the TV playing in the background, reminiscing about his past. 14 years earlier, he was a promising young man with a master's in mechanical engineering, working a straightforward job for St. Anne Parish. His role involved minimal effort, just overseeing project specifications and occasionally visiting sites to ensure compliance. His relationship with Cheyenne had followed a similarly easy path. He indulged her whims, ensuring a constant supply of alcohol and leisure to keep her content. Their life together had become a routine of going through the motions, facilitated by his practical approach to problem solving, mirroring the methodical processes he was trained in. Oh yes, you're too much," the woman on the screen exclaimed. Cheyenne's tattoos initially seemed intriguing. Her dark hair roots also seemed interesting, as did the mismatch of her hair colors. However, Anthony found no excitement in watching the scene unfold on screen, where the woman appeared disengaged and mechanical in her actions. The vacant expression on her face brought back memories of a disconnected intimacy with Cheyenne. Cheyenne's changed physique from a sedentary lifestyle was evident as Anthony struggled with his diminishing passion. Her expression was indifferent, making Anthony feel even more disconnected. Cheyenne's lack of enthusiasm, combined with the haze of substance use, left a stale taste in the air, making Anthony introspective about his own habits. Frustrated, Anthony turned off the screen, ending the unsatisfying display just as it reached its exaggerated climax. Facing Cheyenne's indifferent and distant demeanor, he felt his desire wane completely. In a half-hearted exchange, Cheyenne asked if he was satisfied, to which Anthony responded with a lie, preferring that to the potential criticism or misguided efforts to satisfy him. Cheyenne, unbothered, turned her attention back to her bong. Lying awake in a nondescript motel room, Anthony was haunted by the memory of that last encounter, especially as it preceded the news of his father's death. Seeking a distraction from the silence, he turned on the TV and watched a news report about a fire at a local business, narrated by an enthusiastic reporter. On screen, a scene of communal support unfolded amidst the chaos of the fire, contrasting sharply with Anthony's own sense of isolation and disconnect. Here, we have Antoinette Delacroix, owner of A&E Soaps, Summer was introducing. "Ms. Delacroix, could you share with us? Leave us alone, you relentless reporter," Anita Lopez shouted at the journalist. "Can't you see she's not up for an interview?" That's the reaction Cheyenne should have had upon hearing the news of Anthony's father's passing. Instead of insisting Anthony end the call due to her headache, Cheyenne should have been offering solace, although Anthony wasn't particularly distressed. The desire to drink was strong. The temptation to contact Lionel to get some cannabis was just as strong as Anthony watched a fire engulf a nearby establishment. He observed a Latin woman and a blonde woman consoling each other while Summer Broussard spoke with one of the volunteer firefighters and bystanders. "When you call me like this, you know it's billable, right?" Carter mentioned in a light tone the next morning when Anthony reached out. "Is that so? You don't do this out of sheer kindness?" Anthony responded playfully. "Kindness? What's that?" Carter retorted. "Can you find Cheyenne a competent lawyer?" Anthony requested. "Oh," Carter sounded puzzled. "For her legal troubles, the substance-related accusations. Try to find her a good lawyer. We've been together for 14 years, Anthony elaborated. "Saw a fire last night. A woman was there, supporting her spouse. It's like, we were together for so long, you know." "Sure thing," Carter replied. "I have a fraternity brother at Jones, Pellichet and Jones. I'll talk to him." Whitehead again. And DeFranco, one of Anthony's colleagues, grumbled as Anthony left the office post-call with his lawyer. "Fire me then," Anthony said with a half-smile. "Oh wait, you can't. I work for the government. Take care." Anthony felt a pang of sadness realizing he had overestimated the number of boxes he needed. Aside from his clothes, his belongings seemed insignificant. His departure seemed to leave no mark on the house. He attempted to remove his wedding ring, but the extra weight he had gained made it difficult. "And I'm the one paying for everything," Anthony stated aloud. He thought about leaving the wedding ring for Cheyenne to find, but realized it would be a pointless gesture. The only way she'd likely notice it would be if it were placed in something she used regularly, like her glass or her stash of relaxing herbs. Exiting their shared space, Anthony drove to his bank. With the help of Mitch Dufour, he managed to settle the mortgage on their house. His recent paycheck from Whitehead Generators, Inc. had been substantial, yet a significant portion went towards the mortgage payment. Carter's fraternity brother had succeeded in getting Cheyenne released on bail. Nathan Garcia, the bail bondsman, had covered the necessary 12%, trusting Anthony's financial backing due to his reputable job. Despite Nathan's usual insistence on immediate payment, he had made an exception for Anthony. Regretfully, Anthony informed Nathan over the phone, "I'm sorry, Mr. Garcia, but I had no part in this. I'm not accountable for my soon-to-be ex-wife's bail." Nathan, confused and frustrated, retorted, "Estranged? No one mentioned that you two were separated." Instead of expressing gratitude for Anthony's efforts in securing a lawyer for her, Cheyenne bombarded him with grievances and requests. Anthony, overwhelmed, simply distanced the phone from his ear to avoid her tirade. Cheyenne queried about his availability, adding, "Oh, and my mother wants you to drop the charges against Uncle Bootsy." Anthony replied, dismissively, "Her wishes hold no weight with me." And as for when I'm free, it's no longer your concern. What do you mean? It's none of my business, Cheyenne responded, baffled. We're getting a divorce, remember? Anthony clarified, to which Cheyenne expressed shock. After ending the call, Anthony ignored the successive rings from both his personal and office phones, letting them go to voicemail. When his office phone rang persistently and prompted him to answer. With a quick maneuver, Anthony transferred the call to Anne DeFranco, who answered promptly. Hey, Whitehead, Anne yelled across the office. Got a call for you. Pick up, would you? Anthony reluctantly answered the phone, only to hang up moments later. He repeated this action twice more. By the fifth ring, he had enough and walked out of the office, ignoring the incessant calls. Oh, come on, not now. My kid has a soccer match, Anne protested. Then go watch, Anthony retorted. I'm not stopping you from seeing your kid play, am I? As Anne stormed out, Belle Knowles shouted, Whitehead. Anthony turned, noticing the shift from Anne's smug expression to a scornful look. Can you manage 1 week without causing trouble? Belle asked with a half-smile, echoing Anthony's demeanor. I'll do my best, Anthony quipped. Just remember, you're on the line until your last day here, Belle reminded him. Understood, he replied, acknowledging the bittersweet sentiment. Reflecting on his impending departure, Anthony said, quitting was never my plan. Back at the Pin-Oak Motel, Anthony renewed his stay. The receptionist, a young woman, offered him a deal on movies, but he declined, preferring to use his phone. While deciding on dinner plans, Anthony received a call from Cheyenne. Her voice was feigned innocence and loneliness as she spoke of the empty house. Then do whatever you want with it, Anthony responded wearily. It's yours now. I've settled everything. And just like that, the innocent image shattered, giving way to a person consumed by anger. Anthony set the phone down on the bed, made his way to the bathroom, did his business, and then returned to the bedroom. He retrieved the phone from the bed, catching a voice on the line. Are you listening to me? No, Cheyenne, Anthony replied with a hint of amusement. Missed that. What did you say? That evening, Anthony favored Hop Kim's Chinese restaurant. In a bid to turn a new leaf, he passed on the egg rolls and declined rice with his order. Come morning, he was incredibly hungry but opted for a healthier choice at Dusty's Country Kitchen. A little girl at a nearby table, too big for a booster seat, knelt on her seat, struggling to finish a blueberry waffle, her grandfather watching with a gentle smile. Anthony found himself observing their interaction, tuning into their conversation. Your wife called here 3 times already, and grumbled as Anthony entered the office. What? Why didn't she just? Anthony began, patting his pockets. Then, realization dawned with a smile. He'd left his phone on the bed the previous night after dining out and had forgotten it there through the morning routine. Answer it, will you? Anne pressed as his phone rang. Whitehead, Anthony greeted buoyantly. It's about time, Cheyenne bellowed. How am I supposed to pay Garcia, huh? He's been on my back constantly, kind of like what you're doing to me, Anthony quipped. His insinuation that she find employment only fueled Cheyenne's fury. In a momentary silence, whether for breath or more insult, Anthony seized the chance to end the call, threatening legal action to prevent further harassment if necessary. Anne's smug look annoyed Anthony. Yet, he calmly reminded her of his past support during her personal troubles. Remember, I covered for you here while you dealt with your divorce and child support battles, Anthony pointed out, a stern look on his face. You're right, and conceded after a pause. You did help. A lot. There's a new place near the mall, Acapulco Grand. Anthony changed the subject. How about lunch there? I can't afford it right now. Brianna needs braces, Anne explained. I'll cover it, Anne offered Anthony. While dining, Anthony absorbed the harsh realities of Anne's life as she described the struggle of managing with her 3 kids in a small 2-bedroom apartment. The constant dilemma of choosing between necessary expenses like braces for Brianna or a new coat to replace the worn-out one. Explaining to her children why desires like a trip to the trampoline park or the go-kart ranch for their birthdays were out of reach. They mean everything to me, really, but it's overwhelming at times, Anne confessed, just as the waitress reassured them their meal was nearly ready. And how do you find relief? Inquired Anthony. I fantasize about getting even with their dad, Anne replied half-jokingly. I've always wanted children, Anthony reflected. My niece Gracie is such a joy. I often wish I had my own little ones, like Gracie, Brianna, or Shannon. Or even a Ricky, despite his obsession with soccer. If you want, you can have mine, Anne quipped. Did someone order the enchilada without rice? Interrupted the waitress. That's me, Anthony responded. I always thought there would be a better time. Cheyenne always needed or wanted something. In hindsight, any child of ours would have had to vie for her attention. Thanks for the lunch, said Anne as they departed. Thanks for sharing with me, Anthony responded, holding the car door open for her. I ended up talking more than you did, Anne pointed out. Really, I hadn't noticed, Anthony replied with a smile. Throughout the following week, Cheyenne vacillated between pleading with Anthony to finance Nathan Garcia's demands and urging him to come back home. Anthony's proposition to finance Nathan in exchange for Cheyenne's agreement to a divorce was met with uproar. You know why divorces are so costly? Anthony pondered to Anne after ending another call with Cheyenne. What's that? She inquired, engrossed in her work on a Butterfly Park project. Because it's worth it, Anthony remarked wearily, opting for vegetarian chili tonight. Not because we're health nuts, but because payday is still 3 days away, and explained. That sounds delightful, Anthony responded. Oh, spare me, Anthony, and retorted. It's dreadful, and so is the situation. And their dad, with his new girlfriend, off playing cowboy at some ranch retreat. He's always wanted that cowboy life. You think the kids wouldn't have enjoyed that too? Anthony's last day at work was winding down. Some colleagues popped by to wish him well, while others jokingly acted as if they were ready to claim his office before he even left. Hey, Anthony, he began, I found out about this ranch retreat deal. It's affordable for a single mom with 3 kids. So, here you go. What is this? Anne exclaimed, astonished, as Anthony handed her an envelope containing 4 tickets to a ranch in Oakleaf, Texas. Use them before the year ends, he said, then left. Starting his new job at Whitehead Generators, Anthony met the staff and got a feel for the place, but soon his head was throbbing, and his ears were ringing. After work, with his head still aching, he noticed a new gym. Inside, he met Arthur Porter, a loud and nearly deaf trainer who signed Anthony up for a year without a second thought. Later, Carter mentioned that Cheyenne wanted them to try counseling. Anthony, surprised, chuckled but then agreed to the idea. Who knows? It might not be as bad as I remember, Anthony mused. Sure, let's try counseling. All right, Carter agreed. But only if she's paying, Anthony added. Okay, Carter now smiled. How am I supposed to cover that cost? With my charm. Cheyenne raised her voice over the phone. Cheyenne, can't you tone it down? My head's already pounding from the day's chaos, Anthony sighed. And I'm not fussed about how you fund the counseling. But since you insisted on it, it seems fair you handle the payment. You mean you don't want to try fixing our marriage? Cheyenne sounded dismayed. Honestly, no, Anthony confessed. Somehow, Cheyenne managed to arrange the payment for their initial counseling session with Dr. Sylvia Hooper-Stein. In the waiting room, Anthony offered a polite nod to Cheyenne and proceeded with his paperwork. Under employer, he wrote none. Under insurance, he repeated none. For additional source of income, he crudely joked about an unsavory side hustle. Marnie Vogel, Dr. Hooper-Stein's receptionist, gave a polite smile as she took the clipboard from Anthony. The receptionist, a poised woman in her 40s, started entering Anthony's details into her computer. That's appalling, the woman remarked, her expression turning stern. Anthony just smirked back at her. She maintained her composure even as Cheyenne handed over her forms. Dr. Hooper-Stein will see you now, Marnie announced, gesturing towards the office door. After you, Anthony said to Cheyenne, breaking the silence that had settled between them in the waiting area. 10 minutes into the session, Anthony was already skeptical about Sylvia's ability to mend his and Cheyenne's strained relationship. In just a short time, he grew weary of her biased viewpoints and cliched guidance. Anthony, Sylvia inquired, after Cheyenne had dominated most of the session. Yes, he responded politely. What are your thoughts on your wife's remarks? Sylvia probed. Oh, well, it was interesting, Anthony replied hesitantly. Interesting. What exactly did you find interesting about it? Sylvia asked, puzzled by his vague answer. Anthony quipped. Finally, she speaks without just yelling, highlighting the contrast to her usual demeanor. After their third counseling session, Sylvia suggested adding individual therapy to their couple's counseling. Anthony balked, exclaiming, absolutely not. Dr. Hooper-Stein accused, clearly, Anthony, you seem to have unresolved issues with women. Defensively, Anthony responded, my mother is the pinnacle of grace and elegance. Cheyenne retorted, implying his mother was uptight. Anthony, choosing to ignore Cheyenne, spoke of his sister, Lisa, saying, we share a very close bond. Cheyenne dismissively remarked to Dr. Hooper-Stein, implying Lisa was pretentious. Moving on, Anthony mentioned his niece Gracie, to which Cheyenne sarcastically commented on her difficulties. Frustrated, Anthony revealed she was abused and struggles with it. Cheyenne dismissively said to get over it, mentioning her own past abuse nonchalantly. Anthony, unable to take more, stormed out, leaving the financial burden of the sessions to Cheyenne. Later, Carter jokingly mentioned Anthony's derogatory comment about Dr. Hooper-Stein, laughing about the breach of confidentiality. In a surprising turn, they found themselves in Judge Ken Thuriot's office, where Cheyenne's lawyer argued for Anthony to continue and finance further counseling. Anthony insisted on anyone but Dr. Hooper-Stein for future sessions. And since my client has already completed 3 sessions, he should need no more than 5 additional sessions, Carter proposed. Is Dr. Kevorkian on hand? Anthony inquired loudly. Passed away a few years ago, unfortunately, Judge Thuriot responded with a slight smile. I'll mandate 8 sessions with a licensed counselor, one that both parties can agree upon. And Mr. Whitehead, since you have a stable job, you'll be responsible for covering at least 65% of the costs. Dr. Jackie Trahan was a poised woman in her early 30s, with a confident handshake and direct eye contact with both Anthony and Cheyenne when she spoke to them. She listened attentively, jotting down notes and occasionally asking questions to understand better. She allocated 25 minutes each to listen to Cheyenne and Anthony, even chiding Cheyenne once for cutting off Anthony. Next week, we'll focus on your aspirations. Anthony, what are your goals here? Cheyenne, the same for you. What do you aim to achieve? Jackie inquired. Cheyenne, surprised, retorted, what? Are you serious? We're here to mend our marriage. Jackie subtly hid her amusement, noticing Anthony's silent disagreement. That's your main objective. Now, consider what else you want to achieve here, Jackie encouraged. Anthony mentioned as they left the office, I respect her approach. Oh, typical, Cheyenne scoffed. She was very forthright, wasn't she? No wonder you were attentive. Anthony, puzzled, stopped by his car. She was what? Extremely direct in her manner. Didn't you notice? Cheyenne accused, visibly frustrated. I'll pay more attention next time, Anthony assured her. However, there was no next time. An unexpected visit by a court officer to Cheyenne's home uncovered illegal substances on display, leading to her failing a subsequent drug test. John Bootsy Bordelon showed his displeasure during his court appearance, having been ousted from Allison's life. His situation worsened when he openly threatened Anthony Whitehead in the courtroom, in the presence of the judge, the prosecutor, and the bailiff. Keep talking, Anthony said with a smirk. This led to more angry words and threats of vengeance. What might have been a minor penalty and some time served escalated into a sentence of 40 months in a medium security facility. However, John never made it to the prison. He passed away from a severe heart attack just 2 days post-trial. Back at Whitehead Generators, Anthony faced challenges too. His sudden entry and promotion to supervisor rankled many employees. As a result, productivity began to wane, dropping significantly over the weeks. Efforts to engage with department heads were unproductive. Like their teams, these leaders resented Anthony's rapid rise, feeling he should have earned his position through the ranks, just as they had. Susan and Lisa, despite their concern, were at a loss on how to handle the situation. Mother, I'm on the brink of taking a drastic step, Anthony disclosed following a heated call from an international client. Go ahead, urged Susan. Do it, echoed Lisa. My comment. You think Anthony will get what he wished for, or is he chasing something that's not real? Sub and hit that bell to catch the final part 2 ending in a few hours from now.